Could the Arizona Cardinals drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4 actually expedite the rebuild process more than trading back and drafting more players? Interesting thing to talk about. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Locked On AZ Cards. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. It's only going to get more fun from here. We made it through the doldrums of last year, which was a lot more fun than any of us could have expected. And now it's time to get paid off with the beauty that is the 2024 NFL Draft and beyond. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it. I've got a competitive side. And it's, me being a big fan of Monopoly Go, it's at my fingertips, the mobile twist on the classic game of Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Eric Eager, VP of Consumer Sports, joining me. Eric hasn't been on the show for a long time. A lot has happened and been undone and been redone with a position towards hopeful perpetual relevancy that we've been discussing here on the show. Eric, first off, thank you for joining me. Truly appreciate it. I know you love this time of year.
I do. It's my favorite time of the year because just what you talk about the Cardinals, like hope springs eternal. You're probably in the NFL 1 or 2 drafts away, every single team, from being good. At this time last year, no one thought the Houston Texans were close to being a playoff team. And now, they're a team that might be in the AFC Championship game this year against Chiefs, Bills, or Dolphins, or something like that. And so that could be very much who the Cardinals are this year, which makes me really happy. The fact that the event is 3 days long makes for good entertainment. So I'm really excited for next week.
At Eric Eager _ on Twitter, great follow. So let me do this first. Talk to me about it, because national media kind of was, the Cardinals were somewhat irrelevant for a chunk of time, where they're a talking point, whether it be a free agent signing or trade or draft day, things like that. But starting after the removal of Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, everything seems to be moving in the right direction. Talk to me about your thoughts, more of a bird's eye view over the last year, in a nutshell for the Cardinals. And do you think that they're positioning themselves better than they have in a long time?
Well, there were so many things that, Keim and Kingsbury and Murray did that helped this franchise at times. And so it was always going to be kind of a rough divorce from that regime, because, when Kingsbury took over, the Cardinals, their yards per play was like half a yard worse than the next worst team. And so when Kingsbury came in, they were kind of a bottom third of the league, but a very improved team. Then they were a top third of the league team. Then they were a playoff team, almost a division title team. And then it fell off. And, there were enough good things where Monty Ossenfort, Jonathan Gannon were not dealing with a bare cupboard, but they were dealing with some awkwardnesses. And that the first being, what were they going to do at the quarterback position for the first half of the year last year? Josh Dobbs came in, made them competitive enough where they could get an evaluation on a lot of their players. And, I think that in the second half of the year, Murray was good enough where he could cement himself as the franchise quarterback. B, Jonathan Gannon could show that he in game was a very good coach, a very savvy coach. You saw that in the Philadelphia game at the end of the season, where they beat a team and kept them from winning the NFC East. And Monty Ossenfort has shown that, through trades and things of that nature, that he is a sharp GM. And so I think if you're a Cardinals fan, even though you were under the radar for most of the year last year, you should be very optimistic about this team. Does that mean that they're going to be, contending for the NFC West this year? That doesn't necessarily mean that, but I think long term, you could be pretty confident that this team is going to have a shot, especially in an NFC where it doesn't take being brilliant to compete for a playoff spot.
Yeah, that's well put. Eric Eager, VP of Consumer Sports, joining me, Locked On Cardinals. And I kind of saw it the same way. My big, motif from last year was proof of concept. That's all you want to see is Jonathan Gannon, a head coach. Is are Nick Rallis and Drew Petzing capable of being coordinators, for the first time in that position? Is Drew Petzing's offense going to work? And I think that was the biggest question, obviously, because Kyler Murray with the big contract, seeing Josh Dobbs do it, and then Kyler Murray come in, knock the rust off, and against Philly and then Seattle after, it's just like, this looks like it's going to work with some infusion of talent. And you're right. I mean, everything that we've seen is like, yeah, cool. This is something that we haven't seen because sustained success isn't lightning in a bottle success. Steve Keim was great at the latter from time to time. The sustained, success of this roster and roster building has always been kind of the faux pas or the overlooked thing. Now, before we pivot into the actual draft, you said a couple things interesting there. Kyler Murray being the franchise quarterback, and my question to you is, he doesn't have to throw for 400 yards and have have 4 total touchdowns every week to be that franchise quarterback. In my opinion, do you agree, or do you think that he needs to put up those numbers in an effort to make the contract, quote unquote, worth it?
No, because of the way that the cap works, when you look at his cap hit this year, $49 million, they're not going to do a ton with that. After that, it's $43 million, $53 million, $43 million, $46 million. Those are going to be bargains by the time you get to the end of his contract, the way that the cap is going in the NFL. So he is, not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but I think you can make a case that he's a top 12 quarterback in the NFL, and at his best, probably a top 8 quarterback in the NFL. So to your point, that is going to he's just got to be a Dak Prescott type, a Jalen Hurts type, a Kirk Cousins type, I think, to make this team relevant. And you build around him, and they have so many draft picks. They have so much, in the way of, I think, possible pillar players, obviously Budda Baker and, Johnson at left tackle, right? Obviously. And then whoever they pick at 4, Trey McBride is a pillar player on this team. Sure. Obviously Connor is at running back is, you don't really want to call a running back a pillar player, but he's a very good player for this football team. Very surprisingly good player for this football team, James Conner. Like, there are players that you can build around on this football team that are going to help Kyler Murray, and you start to build the picks now, and you're starting to get premium players. He's not going to have to be the same type of player that, say, Drake May will have to be, for example, for New England, or that Kyler Murray had to be for this team when he was drafted number 1 out of Oklahoma right away. So I think that no, he doesn't have to shoulder the whole load. He has to be Dak Prescott, right? In the ultimate end game for this team, that's who he is, right? And if Marvin Harrison plays the Amari Cooper role, and Trey McBride plays, he's a rich man's Dalton Schultz, frankly, and then they build the offensive line starting with Johnson, and obviously Jonah Williams comes over if he improves, and Hernandez improves and stuff like that. Like, this is a team that could go places. Wilson, Dortch, Pascal, like, this is a good receiving core, and then obviously defensively there does need to be some work as far as pass rusher. There does need to be work in terms of coverage players on the outside. They're pretty good at safety already. I think that in the end game for this team, Murray is one of those top 8 quarterbacks, like a Stafford type player that you could win a Super Bowl with. And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's funny you bring up the Cowboys. I always say that Michael Bidwell runs this organization like he's won multiple Super Bowls, and they just haven't. And you can compare that kind of how Jerry runs it. Jerry's had very top-heavy teams, paid a lot of stars, a lot of money, but the actual roster itself didn't have any sort of cohesion. I think when Monty Osborne calling the shots, that's something that the Cardinals are definitely going to avoid more than be attracted to, like they have been over the last decade with Steve Keim at the helm. Eric Eager, Super Sports, one of the best out there. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Let's hit the draft. You talk about having a lot of draft picks. It makes me – I flip-flopped my thought on what they should do it for. I'm interested to get your thoughts next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by Monopoly Go. So I've been told I'm a competitive person. My friends have, and it actually works out because my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist of Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge the rent for iconic properties just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me, who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. Hopefully it'd be me. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Locked on Cardinals, Alex Clancy. Follow me on Twitter at Locked on AZ Cards. We're ramping up, man. Eric Eager, VP of Sumer Sports, joining me. So I was on the trade back train until about a week ago. I had this internal struggle, and the struggle, people say the struggle is real. Like, this is fun no matter what. I say the Cardinals are going to win no matter what. And Monty Osford can't bleep this up. It's both, because this is potentially the most pivotal offseason. Everybody says that pivotal draft in the history of the organization, one that's been infused with dysfunction and ineptitude for a large portion of its existence. I have pivoted to the Cardinals staying at 4 and drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. if he's available, obviously, in a vacuum, because they've got 10 more picks this year and they've got their bevy of picks next year, as well as more money than King Midas to spend in the offseason next season. I feel like setting and forgetting from the wide receiver position, barring any sort of unforeseen bustability, which, it would be rare talking about Marvin Harrison Jr., is the best route to position this team for future success. Agree, disagree, or still indifferent, or, undecided?
Well, I think everything has a price, right? I think for the most part, the last few weeks has been teams like Arizona, teams like the Chargers, talking about JJ McCarthy as if he's the 4th best player in the draft, so that they can get a haul for that pick from a team like Minnesota, from New York, maybe a team like Atlanta before Kirk Cousins was signed there, Las Vegas, Denver, because all of it depends on price. Like, if you take Marvin Harrison and the opportunity cost was, let's say for Minnesota's sake, 11-23, next year's first and maybe next year's third, that's a hard give up. If it's just 11-23 and next year's third and it's not next year's 1, okay. And I wrote an article for Sumer Sports just now about kind of draft curves and how it works. And my boss across the room from me, Thomas Dimitrov, kind of turned me on to this. It's sometimes in these teams, the draft value curve is a certain way, but you're trying to develop the team in certain ways. A top 10 player is a different player. It doesn't work linearly. You're trying to get a superstar player with that pick, just the same way that Thomas moved up and got Julio Jones in 2011. Right. So he gave up 27. Now 27 and the other picks he gave up, 59, next year's 1, all those picks, if you average them out, are worth more than pick 6. But when you take the probabilities of becoming a superstar, maybe those aren't worth it, right? And so if you're the Cardinals, you really have to do that calculation, because when I look at this team, Budda Baker is a superstar, but he's not at a premium position. Kyler Murray is kind of on the precipice of this. No one else on this roster is a superstar player. So you're trying to, and like you said, you have 10 other picks. So much like Kansas City in 2022, they had 12 picks. They used some of them to go up and get Trent McDuffie, who ended up being a first team All-Pro, and they used the other 9 of them to build depth. So if you're the Cardinals, you do need depth on defense. You do not have a pass rusher of note. You don't have great coverage players, but luckily for you, you don't need to generate that depth through a trade with pick 4. You have those picks already. So why not use pick 4 to get a superstar and then use the remaining picks to generate depth? And in fact, you don't even you can get, I think, premium depth, given you have 27, 35, picks that are going to be real football players for you that are probably going to start right away. So I'm okay taking Marvin Harrison. I think that you just have to really weigh it. If the Giants come in and give you pick 6 if the Giants give you pick 6 and they give you next year's 1 and a haul for that, and then you can get whomever's left over between Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison, or the Chargers fall in love with a lineman, take Joe Alt, and you ultimately get Harrison at 6 anyway. those are the things that you might want to take a gamble on. But I couldn't fault the Cardinals at all for being like, let's not even mess around. Let's just take him. And I think that ultimately is what happens, because I think it's going to go Williams. I think it's going to go May or Daniels. And I think it's going to go Daniels or May. And then I think that all of this smoke about JJ McCarthy was mostly teams trying to get the Cardinals to give up that pick and for all of the good non-quarterbacks to move back a pick.
That's fascinating. Yeah, it's a good position to be in. The Cardinals have found that my dad always says, do good things and good things will happen. And it's not absolute, but it's like the Cardinals have done the little incremental things to position themselves to have a position to be able to maximize irrespective of what they choose. And I think that's where they're at. Now, I'm going to ask you this because it's just a question that needs to be asked until Thursday. You think that a one and Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors is greater than or equal to Marvin Harrison Jr.? Or is it so close that it's really how you want to construct your roster?
With the caveat that I'm a mathematician and my individual evaluations of players have big error bars around them, I have a similar evaluation of both Neighbors and Harrison, but I do give the edge to Harrison because he's taller, he's one more on the outside, and he won by himself last year, right? So Neighbors had Brian Thomas, who's another top 15 pick. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't. Like Jamar Chase had Justin Jefferson. Both of them are great pros. So that doesn't mean that Neighbors and Brian Thomas are not going to be great pros. Harrison is the best player on that team. Everybody knew about it, and he still was amazing. So I give a slight edge to it, but that, to the point that you just made, a slight edge means that if I'm guaranteed Neighbors and a one, of course I'm going to take that, because that's, mathematically speaking, that makes a one is worth, 15 million APY, and there's no mathematical model that's going to tell me that Marvin Harrison is 15 million better per year than Malik Neighbors is. That's just not going to work. He's not 15 million better than Rome Odunze, even though Odunze is I think a slight, a step below. The problem is the Chargers aren't trading up to 4. So if you trade back, right, you're trading back to 6. And so you run the risk of this Chargers taking Harrison or Neighbors or something like that. And it's just a lot of risk associated with that. And you're going to have to do what you did last year with the Cardinals, which is trade back and then trade up. And, you pay a vig to do that, right? And I'm used to be a sports bettor. You pay a price to move up that on that second one, and that because teams don't do 3-way trades in the NFL. So that's the risk. So again, I wouldn't fault the Cardinals for saying, I don't really want to run this risk. I get it, but I really want a wide receiver, because if I can have Dorsch, Wilson, and Harrison to go with Murray, now all of a sudden my $50 million contract for this quarterback looks a lot better, because wide receiver one's making $8 million a year. So now it's 58 between those two players, which is a bargain.
Yeah. I mean, that's my least favorite trade down, because it's so close. It's like, if you're moving, you don't want to be sitting next to Marvin Harrison Jr. saying, sorry, dude, we found something better. I think that it's playing with fire. But again, the numbers show different, and the numbers are what's going to, be the catalyst for this final segment. Quick segment here. What are some names of players in middle rounds that Eric likes? And it's not just going to be, off ball, Edgerrin Cooper. I've heard his name a lot. Blake Corum was a running back. They won a national championship. I have a feeling, and Eric doesn't know this last segment was happening, but I'm going to be in his wheelhouse because I want to know names that he likes that may not just be household names. And that's next. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Eric Eager, VP of Sumer Sports, joining me here. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and your financial freedom, right? And with Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you the tools and data you need in one place. The number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, et cetera, et cetera. Securely link your brokerage accounts to a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. All right, final segment. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. Eric Eager, VP of Sumer Sports, joining me. One of the best follows out there at Eric Eager _ on Twitter. I'm going to have him plug everything you don't want to do at the end of the show, too. So, Marvin Harrison Jr., deep draft, top 50 picks. Is the fascinating thing, and before we pivot into this really quick, are you seeing mock drafts being the range of where players are being taken, like middle first round to middle second round? Is it normal that the gap is usually this wide? I'm seeing names everywhere. I'm seeing Chop Robinson going 38. I'm seeing Chop Robinson going 20. I'm seeing, Brian Thomas is a big one. Xavier Legette had, the Jets behind him where he would go third round all the way up to the end of the first round. Is this normal and I'm just noticing it? Or is this a weird draft where you have no idea where the hell these players are going to be taken?
Well, the mock draft simulator stuff is the big thing too, because I was part of the team that built the one at PFF, so I kind of know what goes into it. We have one at Sumer that we sell to the teams, and there's various things that go into them, right? And the betting markets change stuff. So Graham Barton goes from being a guy who people didn't think was a first round pick, and now people think he's a lock to be a first round pick. 2 years ago, Quay Walker was plus 600 to be a first round pick. And then my agent friends were like, hey, Eric, he's a first round pick. And so then we all bet him to go first round pick. And then that was the thing. So I think it's information, of course, changes hands, and then you get this variance. But there's also, I think the big thing is this draft is it's not equally distributed among positions. You look, there's going to be no safeties in all likelihood. There's going to be no running backs in round one, no safeties in round one, no linebackers in round one, and one tight end in round one, and one tight end that we know that's going in round one. So from those, you have four kind of basically fixed positions, and then you have 10 offensive linemen projected to go in round one, 6.5 wide receivers, 5.5, 6 corners, and 4.5 to 6 quarterbacks. And so you permute those, right? That gives them wide distributions, right? Because then it's styles make fights. Is it a team that likes long-armed linemen or short-armed linemen? Is it a guard center? Is it wide receiver? Because with wide receivers, it's people forget N'Keal Harry went a whole round before DK Metcalf. So is Keon Coleman going to go around before Troy Franklin, and that kind of thing, because of what just these teams want and prefer. So I think it's just a really wide variance in terms of what teams kind of prize, but then it's also the fact that all the teams need kind of the same thing in this draft, or all teams will draft the same thing in this draft in the first round, which is linemen, wide receivers, quarterbacks, or defensive backs. That's and there's 3 edge players that are going to go. So 5 defensive linemen at most. But it's not like the Najee Harris draft. We all knew that Pittsburgh was taking a running back, and then and so forth. It's very much all the teams are kind of taking the same position, and then you're just shuffling the deck chairs.
Yeah, I mean, that's well said. I mean, that's a great perspective. 2 questions. I'm going to get you out of here. 1, give me 2 names. Middle round, third round. The Cardinals have 3 third-round picks as of now. Who knows if Monty Osborne's going to wheel and deal with them. Blake Corum, as I mentioned, Edgerrin Cooper, potentially the best off-ball linebacker out of Texas A&M, is mocked to go in that area. Give me 2 names that you love that maybe some people don't know the name
of. I like DJ James, the cornerback from Auburn. I know that he's not necessarily mocked in the 3rd round. I think PFF has him as 153. I went to the Iron Bowl. One of my friends was the former director of player personnel with Auburn, and I just remember him making. Now he gave up the game-winning touchdown, so for whatever that's worth, that crazy play that kept Auburn from winning the game. But for the most part, the pretty good player, and was always sort of showing up 6'1", kind of in that 170 range. So a little bit of a smaller player, but I really like him. Now this player, again, he's not going to be like a third round guy, but I've always kind of liked his profile as a runner, and that's Kamal Vidal, the running back from Troy. Again, PFF has him 183, 5'8", 218, just a big physical running back that I think Isaac Guerrero is getting like all the love for like late round players. Vidal is like a year and a half younger. Just on-field stuff is incredible. Again, like not a ton of wear and tear on him either. Like I just like him. Those are two more later round guys, but I do really like them as players. If I had to maybe give one that's going to be kind of in that like 90 range though, Jamari Thrash of Louisville has always been a guy that I've liked, and I've taken a lot of those mock drafts. 6'1", 185, just again like a good wide receiver that I think will add. He's not going to be a starter for a team, but I think coming in and being a third guy, and I think when you're a team that has 11 picks, even if you're going to take a starter with the first pick at wide receiver, you shouldn't be bashful about taking another wide receiver in that draft.
Yeah, I love that. And this is the last one. I'll get you out of here on this. Is this a trend? Is this coincidental? I'm seeing every, premium position, wide receiver and corner specifically, are looking to become the quarterback light of who drafts you isn't going to pay you, potentially, where it's like wide receivers get traded before the big contract. L'Jarius Sneed just got traded. Like, do you see a trend where teams are going to be drafting those players higher to maximize that window in an effort to maybe win a Super Bowl or get close and then move on from them? Or is that more of just a recency bias or whatever, confirmation bias for something that I already thought is a potential trend?
It's a good question. I think draft picks, no, because it just takes forever for them to now further away from the ball, wide receiver, corner, you have a better shot of that player being good right away. The problem is corner, it's not developed. So the problem corner has is it's so variable year to year. So it's not about development so much as it is about variance. For offensive linemen, it's about development. So like I draft Andrew Thomas, I'm more certain that he'll be good than if I draft Jeff Okudah. But I'm going to know about Jeff Okudah much more quickly than I'm going to know about Andrew Thomas. Yeah. So to your point, like if corners had the same variance as tackles, which your point is well taken. What I think is maybe the thing that teams should think about is if you're in the position of the Cardinals were in, or the blueprint that the Bears have put out, is if you are a team like the Cardinals who is going to have a lot of cap space, who has a lot of picks, who in the future, if you draft 11 players this draft and a bunch of them work out, you're not going to be able to keep them all. And you're going to have a lot of position groups without a veteran. Trade your picks for veteran players and use the cap space, because you're not going to be able to. The Bears figured it out, because you're not going to get a Montez Sweat in free agency. You're not going to get a DJ Moore in free agency. The best free agent wide receiver was Christian Kirk, another Jaguar. And that's not a good use of your dollars. As good as he can be, it's still, he's not worth $20 million. So the way to go about it is, if you are a team that is rebuilding, use the capital you have, use the space you have, and do things that maybe somebody like me would call an overpay. But in the grand scheme of things, what else? Like, smoke it while you got it. You have the picks, you have the space. Go out and get a pass rusher and pay market level rates, because you're not going to be at 27. You're not going to get a pass rusher historically that's any good. And at 4, you're taking Marvin Harrison, and in free agency, the best you're going to be able to get is like Jonathan Grenard. So that would be my advice.
I love that. Eric Eager at Eric Eager _ VP Sumer Sports. Where can they find you aside from Twitter?
Yeah, so at Sumer Sports on Twitter, sumersports.com. We've been putting out a ton of content. We're gonna have a mock draft on Friday. We're gonna have our YouTube page. We're gonna have a live draft show. Myself, former Falcons GM Thomas Dimitrov. We're gonna be Thursday night, and then we're gonna be Saturday morning on Sirius XM channel 88 to preview round 3. A lot of great stuff from us at Sumer. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Like I said, I love the draft. It'll be such a great time.
Dude, that was so much fun. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you tomorrow.